Welcome to Life Skills, and I want to welcome you again to a year that can change your life. God has everything in place. He's planned it out, and now He invites you to the table. We're going to start with a parable from Matthew 22, and let me give you a little bit of the context. The king has a wedding feast, but many who were invited didn't attend. They were called, but they had a lot of other things to do, which seemed more important. So the king said, let's just invite those out on the streets. If the ones I invite don't come, let's open up the invitation, an open invitation. And when the hall was filled, we find these words, and I quote, "But when the king came in to look over the dinner guests, he saw a man there who was not dressed in wedding clothes. And he said to him, 'Friend, did you come here without wedding clothes?' And the man was speechless. Then the king said to the servants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen.'" It's an interesting story. In other words, the king invited many people to come to the feast, and they came, but there was one who came unprepared. He came to the feast, but he was unprepared. There's one in this whole feast that figured out that this invitation wasn't great enough. It wasn't a great enough privilege for him to have to change for. He comes, takes what he wants, but figures, but I didn't have to change. I didn't have to prepare. I don't have to ready myself. This has a very profound application because the king has invited you. But before you embark, you must be willing to change, to prepare yourself, to ready yourself for what the king has invited you to. Remember that, because we could be like that one who came unprepared and the king says, out. You came, but you're not prepared. You need to be both. You need to be ready to change because this invitation is a great privilege. It's enough for you to be ready to change for. So I want to encourage you, be ready to listen in class. Now, some of your classes will be so dramatic this year that it will change your future. And this class may be one of them. But if you're somewhere between checking your Facebook account and slipping into a coma, then you might miss what very well may have transformed your life. Now, let me give you a little bit of a window to take a look at it from a spiritual point of view. The enemy can't read your mind. God can. The Bible says God knows the minds of men. He knows the hearts of men. But Satan can't. But yet Satan knows what you need. He can see your life, if you're married, your marriage, or your habits, or your lack of discipline. And he also can see, if I'm the teacher, he can see what I'm preparing for this class. He can read this stuff. Now, he just deduces or puts one and one together and figures, what is going to be taught in this class is exactly what you need. Exactly what Beth needs, or Steffi needs, or Joe needs, or Bill. And he sees the two, and so you know what the devil's going to do? The devil's going to do everything he can to keep you from getting to class. Or if you do, you come unprepared, unready to change, not pliable. You're kind of drifting in and out of sleep, or your mind is gone, or you're checking some email, and bang, what was said is exactly what you needed. But Satan has got to figure a way to distract you. Remember, Satan may not be able to destroy you, so he's going to distract you from what God has. He can't change, he can't hear your thoughts, and he can't read your mind, but he can read what I'm preparing, and he can also see what you need. So when he sees it's going to be spoken, watch. He'll make you want to sleep in. You'll have every excuse in the world not to come to class. because the enemy plays for keeps, and he knows what's going to be said is what you're going to need. And so can I encourage you to listen in class and be ready to change? Because if you will change, everything else will change for you. I tell people this. I say, work harder on yourself than on your job. Because when you work harder on yourself than anything else, when you work harder on yourself, everyone around you will see the improvement and they will become automatic beneficiaries of your improvement. Now, this year, you're going to have many, many lessons, and you're going to go through a ton of experiences. But let me just say this. It's not going to just be experiences that's going to change you. No, experiences alone don't change you, because you have some people that do the same dumb thing over and over again. Don't raise your hands. But there's people that do the same thing over and over again. It's not experience that you'll learn from. It's your ability to, here it is, reflect on experiences that'll change you, that'll help you to learn. No, I didn't say stew on your experiences, worry about your experiences, sit and beat yourself to death over a past experience. No, I said reflect on experiences, and reflection has a certain goal. Listen carefully. Stewing on and reflecting on are different. Here's the goal of reflecting on an experience. Here it is, to get the lessons from these failures or setbacks or disappointments. You want to take this failure, this disappointment, you want to take it to a place where these things begin to work for you rather than against you. See, if you stew on it all the time and you just go over it in your mind in a negative way, you'll just get victimized and you'll get mad. Then you'll start to blame. You get discouraged and depressed. But if you'll take the time to reflect on them, which means think about them until you can figure a way that they start to work for you rather than against you, that's the goal of reflecting. If you'll reflect on those experiences, you'll learn how to reinterpret them or interpret them correctly, see them correctly so that they become mentors for you. Lessons that'll make you better. Lessons that'll make you humbler. Lessons that'll make you wiser. We're all going to go through tough experiences, suffering. And suffering will change you, but not necessarily for the better. No, you have to choose that. You see, when you go through suffering, you have to redefine those events in your life into beneficial mentors. Did you catch that? You have to redefine them into or see them into becoming beneficial mentors for you. Otherwise, they'll be torturers for you. You want them to become teachers, and that's the way you define it. For example, something negative or a failure can motivate you to train harder, or it can cause you to just quit. And I wish things were better. No, it takes the right kind of thinking. You can think it up or you can think it down. I mean, think about Jesus and all the negative things that happened to him. The demons were after him. The poor people crowding into him wanting more. The Pharisees are trying to ruin him. His own family is trying to desert him, and even his disciples leave him. Now, if he defined all these things as negative, think about it. Each of us would yet be today unredeemed. But he left us an example of how to redefine things. Even Pilate. Do you remember when he was condemning Jesus to death? And Jesus just stood there silently. And Pilate got mad. And he pompously reminded Jesus, hey, listen, you better talk because I have the authority to crucify you or let you go. You understand that? And Jesus, remember, he said, it's true, but you'd have no authority unless it were first given to you by my Father. So Jesus knew that everything that happened to him, the Father had okayed it. He had already said, I approve it. It'll work for him. It's under my control. Same is true with you. God has everything set out. So, even if you experience something tough and negative, well, we wouldn't wish it on anybody, but that's life. But listen, God, He'll turn it for you. He'll turn it into a classroom. But you have to be a good student, ready to change. You got to be prepared this year. You have to be ready to figure out, to learn how to define things into a higher state rather than into a lower state. If you just see things into a lower state, that's what gossip and slander are examples of. Because I see things into a lower state. Yeah, this is what he meant. His attitude stunk. Well, I can't believe that they did this. And it's motivated by distrust. Let me give you another example of seeing things or redefining things into a higher state. In life, you're going to have two timelines, past and future. Now, the present is brief. It's right now. But you're going to have the past, and then you're going to have the future. Now, let me address first your past. Many of you have come to this college from a less than desirable past. It wasn't that good. It may have been very tough, may have been not tough enough. Your parents could have been too strict or not strict enough, too loose, and you reaped some consequences from that. You didn't develop the disciplines necessary, or you developed an excuse mentality or a blame mentality or just a distrust. But here it is. Regardless of how you were brought up, whether your past was good or not so good, whether you had a wonderful blossoming family or one where a sister got molested, either way, your past, now listen carefully, you got to make it work for you, not against you. You have to reinterpret those events so that they work for you. That they're not a menace in your life, they're a mentor. Listen, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. You say, well, that's in my past. No. Listen, you can reinterpret your past and make it a teacher, not a torturer. A mentor rather than a menace. My own past, we grew up in a family where my dad at a young age had an affair and would fight with my mother. And one of my earliest memories, I remember when they were fighting and my father was actually hitting my mother. And I jumped on my mom and between my dad and my mom, and I said, please don't hit my mom anymore. And I was crying and she was crying. My dad turned around and left. Divorce happened. And then they split up, and my mom, being a single mom, 4 kids, she didn't have much, and so she had to work as a waitress. Well, we hardly had anything. Well, my mom remarried, but her new husband didn't have enough money to support a family that they wanted to have, and then these 4 kids. So my dad said, well, I'll take them because he was in the army. I'll take them and I'll get, because I have more dependents, they call it, or children, the army will give me more money for them. Well, we went to my father's. 2 of my siblings came right back because he was far too strict in the military fashion and very, very stern. Well, immediately within the first year, my 2 oldest siblings left, went back to my mother and in Hawaii, and my dad went to Japan. And he was so stern. I remember he would keep a whip behind his door, and we would probably get it 3-4 times a week. And there were times I didn't want to go to PE at school because of all of the red marks and welts on my back and down my leg, and because I didn't want to go into shorts, too embarrassed. And my brother was sent to the hospital once because of some of the strict disciplines and the beatings, and it was a hard upbringing. At 13 years old, I was given a suitcase and sent away 250 miles, 300 miles south to a boarding school at 13 years old. Got on a Greyhound bus, and I was on my own from that point on. Had to work, find jobs on my own since 13. Things didn't fare well. I got booted out of my first high school, dropped out of my second high school, and joined a rock and roll group and just left home. And one of the last things my dad did was slap me upside the head because he didn't like something I did. And one of my last phrases or words to him, "You do that again and I will kill you." Not a real flowery parting, was it? It wasn't sugar sweet, I tell you. Well, that's what happened. I then get saved, become a Christian just about 3-4 years later, and God changed everything in my life. I remember God saying to me, "You need to drive back to your father and offer forgiveness and ask for forgiveness and repair that past. Otherwise, your past will continue to dog your heels and until it overtakes you." God changed my whole life. Everything changed. Years later, as I pastored New Hope and in Hilo, I was a youth pastor for 10 years, and then we went to Hilo, was there 11 years, and then we pioneered in Honolulu and began planting churches, and it was quite a life of lots of activity and seeing God do great miracles. It was one day at a class that I was teaching, a lady came up and heard me share about my past, and she said, "Man, don't you wish you had a better past? If you could change it, would you have changed it?" And at first I wanted to say, "Well, absolutely. Are you kidding? I wish I had a real nice dad and mom, and we came from a upper middle class family." No. After thinking about it, I thought, no, I wouldn't change it. I'd be nicer if I had a better past, but I wouldn't change the one God gave me. You know why? Because I firmly believe, that God saw my future and knew the disciplines I would need to pass the tests in my future, to obey Him when I didn't want to obey Him, and when I would get knocked down by the enemy, to get myself back up again and again and again. And I would need to get up one more time. And the many times that I'd want to quit, I'd just say, "No, I've got to keep going." Dust myself off and pull up my straps and keep right on going. And God knew that I needed to do that. And about the only way He could train me to have that kind of fortitude was to put me in the kind of family that we had, with all of the rough edges, with all the burrs, with all of the sharp barbed wire words and the breakups. And if I could survive that, then it would give me the necessary character and depth to be able to survive what God's going to ask of me. If God wanted me to have been in a different family, He could have, but for some reason, He allowed me, didn't cause it, He allowed me to go through this, because even as Jesus said to Pilate, "You'd have no authority over me unless my Father had checked it off and said, 'It's okay. I have a bigger plan.'" And I want to speak to you, sister, or you, brother. You're sitting in this class thinking, "Yeah, I wish I had a better past." Can I encourage you? It's never too late to have a happy childhood. I want you to think it through and define it in such a way until it starts to work for you and not against you. Because remember this, God is for you and never against you. So, why redefine your past? Well, from your past, you get experience. And when you reflect on it, you get the lessons until it works for you. Remember, you reflect on an experience until it starts to work for you and no longer against you. So from the past, you get experience. But from the future, well, let me talk a little bit about your future, you get inspiration. How? Hope. Here it is. Your future hasn't come to pass yet. So you can imagine how God would give you a bright future, because He promises that in Jeremiah 29:11. "I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord, plans not for your calamity, but for your welfare, in order to give you a future and a hope. Listen, you must decide that you're going to believe that God wants the best for you, because He does, but you have to believe that. So get ready for your future. Imagine a bright future. Get hope from it. Get hope from your future. Build it in your mind in such a way that you can glean hope from it. Because God is, and if you're going to cooperate with God, you need to think with the mind of Christ. We say, well, how do you prepare for your future? Because you got to prepare for it. Remember that man that came into the wedding feast unprepared? He was there in the feast, in the king's house, but he missed it all. And we can do the same thing. So you say, well, how do you prepare for your future? Here it is. You're in college now. Learn everything you can. Learn everything you can. Don't be lazy. Read until you become all you want to become. Because remember this, success and fruitfulness are intentional. It is not accidental. John 15:8 says, "By this is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples." By this is my Father glorified, that what? That you bear much fruit. You see, God doesn't give out medals for mediocrity. So when you need to, work hard. Think well. Overcome the temptation to be distracted, especially in this digital age where you can get distracted by the push of a digital button. Now, sometimes we think that just because something is fun, it's okay to do. Not true. Well, this is funner. No, doesn't make it better. Now remember, sometimes we say, well, YOLO, you only live once and this is fun, so go do it. No, YOLO can also stand for you obviously lose out. YOLO. So just because it's fun doesn't make it right. It may be something you want to stay away from. Don't make fun your God. Don't make, it's cool and it's new and everybody else is doing it. Don't make that your God. You let Jesus be Lord. Hey, let me talk just a moment about your future. Where do you want to go? Or what do you want to be? Have you thought about it? Skills. What skills do you want to gain? What people do you want to meet? Those aren't just pipe dream questions. You need to try and answer them. I did. And then you know what I did? I wrote them all down. Now this piece is one of the most important. Please catch this about your future. Early on, I learned to write things down. I have goals, thoughts. On my iPhone, I have all my goals, thoughts, ideas. I even keep a performance journal that measures my progress in certain areas that I want to excel in. And I check my goals. And I check them off. And if I don't have them done, I get them done. You see, when you write things down, that's how you create vision. That's why the Bible says, write down the vision, make it plain, so those who read it may run. You see, that's how you gain vision. If you don't write anything down, it's a pipe dream. But you have to see it clearly enough to be able to write it down. If you don't, it's still a blur. See, if you can't write it down, your mind won't be able to plot the coordinates necessary for you to achieve that. Scripture tells us, the mind of a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. In other words, what will the Lord have to direct if the mind of the man doesn't plan? We work together. Now, God always has veto rights, but I'm still going to plan. You're a part of the deal. You got to play your part. I remember the story of this Portuguese guy. He was praying, oh God, I need money. Help me win the lottery. He went down the next day and no check in the mail. He prays again, dear God, you said you'd answer my prayers. Help me win the lottery. God, I really need money. And he was really serious. Well, he checked his mail out of faith and still nothing. Third day, dear God, you said you'd answer my prayer. Help me win the lottery. All of a sudden, there's a big thunderous boom, and God speaks, and he says, hey, brother, meet me halfway. At least buy a ticket. You see, you have a part to play. Sometimes we just kind of check out on our side and think, come on, God, what's with it with you? You're not doing your part. You got to do yours. And here's a little part. Write it down. Plan. See, it requires a vision. And the sign that your vision is clear is that you are able to put it on paper. For example, you're sitting in a building right now, and the church is in a building. The auditorium is there. Now, you ask yourself, how did this building that you're sitting in get here? Where the church is, how did all of that get there? Well, somebody had to see that building so clearly in their mind that they could actually draw a picture of it. It's called a blueprint. An architect did it. But they had to see the building and all of its that it contains. They had to see it so clearly that they could draw a picture of it. And when you do that with your future, giving God veto rights, but when you do that with your future, you know what it's called? A vision. That's right. Then you have a vision. Then that vision, when you make it the way that you feel God has it for you, it gives you hope. It gives you a pathway, it gives you a purpose, because you can see it. And hope is a powerful thing. Now, it depends how often you use it to build vision. I mean, if you never do that, then you're not using your imagination well. But you see, it's a part of imagination. And faith and hope together has to culminate in something. You know what it is? It's follow through or activity. So you have this imagination, you write it down, it becomes a vision. It gives you hope, all right? Now watch this. The next is you start to follow through. You know what that's called? Faith. Yeah, because faith without works is what? Dead. In other words, a faith without action isn't faith at all. But action is what will grant you the ability to tap into that vision and all the unprecedented opportunities that'll start coming your way because God is seeing that you're a person of vision. And if you don't see that vision, you won't recognize the opportunities. The very thing that you're praying for, a doorway of opportunity might appear, but you won't even recognize it because you don't know that it's a part of your vision. And so you've got to be able to make sure that you can write it down. Just like a child, before it's born, a mother goes through labor pains. Now, it requires action to get that child to be born, because labor pains produces new life. Same is true with you and me. You know what the magic piece of all of this is? Labor. That's right. Not labor pains, but labor. Yeah. Action. That's what births new careers, a marriage, a new future, a new ministry, and so much more. You say, well, what's action? Well, action is labor. And the Bible talks about labor, doesn't it? It contrasts it with slothfulness. Labor, when you're in college, you got to work. You got to study. You got to say, I can't go to that movie because I want to study. Now, even though that's funner, doesn't make it right. Remember that. And even if you have a good vision, I mean, you can have a great vision. Churches have vision, denominations have vision, but often, if you just have vision without action, you know what I call vision without action? It's called a hallucination. Yeah, because there's no action. The Bible talks about labor. Now, remember what the original definition of labor is? 6 days thou shalt labor, and 1 shall be for rest. How many days you're supposed to labor? 6. How many rest? 1. Now, don't get those mixed up. Sometimes most people want to rest 6 and work 1. That's unbiblical. If you rest too long, the weeds are going to take over. Don't do that. Action is what God uses to finish His miracle. Faith is action. Remember, they go together. Faith isn't just woo-wee. No. Faith is actually building daily from the blueprint of hope. That you say, okay, that's what I want to become. Well, what do I need to do today in order to get there? Oh, you're walking in faith. Absolutely. And I'm pursuing the hope of a bright future. See, your hope is real. It's not a pipe dream when it is backed up by faith. Remember, faith isn't a religious feeling. It is action that's strategic to become what God has called you to do. Faith without works is not faith. Faith is including labor. We get this soft definition of faith that's like something out there that God's going to do everything. God does it in the end, but remember, you buy the ticket. You have to be a part of all of that. It's real. So, this week, can I encourage you? Take time, would you, just to blueprint out what you sense would be a preferred future for you. Oh, I'm sure it'll change as you go along, and you'll hit some bumps and some brick walls along the way. Don't get discouraged. But it's better to start off with a positive, faith-filled blueprint draft than nothing at all. Write down what the most important things will be in order for this whole blueprint to come to pass. For example, what principles should you live by in order for this to come to pass? And the sooner you plot out the right direction, the better. The right principles that you have to live by, the better. And the clearer you got the picture, the greater the chances you have of becoming the person this year that'll make Jesus proud of you and make you glad. Start today. This is a life skill that will make this year one of the best ever in your growth with Christ. Thanks for being a part of this life skills class. I love being with you, and I know God will use you in great ways right here at Pac Rim. So keep staying strong, keep your eyes on Jesus, and be a person of vision, hope, and faith. God bless you.